There is a Solution for That is sponsored by VARC Solutions. VARC Solutions helps small businesses succeed by delivering expert QuickBooks bookkeeping, consulting, quick-base development, and integrated solutions. If you own a small to medium-sized business that uses QuickBooks or QuickBase, the experts at VARC Solutions can help. In business since 1999, with people who care and the knowledge and experience to solve your toughest problems. Visit VARCsolutions.com for all your QuickBooks needs. Welcome back to another edition of There's a Solution for That, where we help small businesses succeed by discussing challenging business problems and best-in-class solutions. All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of There's a Solution for That. As always, we have an amazing guest, Tom Roberto, in the house, CTO of SG Network Services, and we're going to have a great conversation about network infrastructure, the unsexy side of tech that makes everything work. So, thanks, Tom, for being here. Welcome to the show.
Brad, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I always like to give people kind of the opportunity to say in their own words who they are and what they do, because quite frankly, you're going to say it a lot better than me. So why don't you go ahead and just do that? Just, what is SG Network Services and what do you guys do?
Yeah, for sure. So, like you said, I'm the chief technology officer for the business. SG's been around since 2004-ish. And basically we're a field logistics business, right? So we deploy people throughout the United States and Canada to perform stuff that most people don't think about when it comes to tech. You know, the back end infrastructures, the data centers, the cabling, the Wi-Fi, the stuff that businesses really use to keep their payment systems running or keep their businesses afloat. But a lot of them don't think about that, and it's not, the sexy AI software and server hosting and things like that. And we've been doing it a long time. We're really proud of the client base we have, and we really try to be like the Cadillac in our space.
Awesome. Awesome. So one of the things that you said that kind of like, I try to form at least a mental picture of like what that actually means. So there's a building going up, there's a warehouse, there's an office building. You guys are doing the cabling, the network, all the stuff that's behind the walls, probably.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of times we're in stores and enterprises before the walls are up, right? So we're drilling through the floors, putting the conduit in. We're pulling all of the network cables through the walls. We're terminating stuff in back rooms that nobody ever sees. So, it's funny. We always say we're like the unsexy side of technology because it's the stuff that nobody ever sees, but it's the first thing they complain about when it doesn't work, which is always very interesting, right?
Yeah, it's when something's broke, where's it broke? Well, we got to cut open that wall. We
That's
got to
right.
go to that junction box. We got to go climb
Exactly.
up in the roof, right? There's always something. So is it 100% commercial or do you guys do residential as well?
Great question. Yeah, no, we're only commercial, so a lot of times the best fits for us is types of customers that either have a really wide geography. So when you think of like the public storages, the Home Depots, the Target type store deployments, people that have stores everywhere,
Right.
or enterprises that you find everywhere, Ernst and Young's, and these businesses that you'll find corporate headquarters everywhere. The other thing that we're a good fit for a lot of times, and people don't think about this stuff, is when you've got one campus location, but the technology is real deep. So if you think about hospital systems or college campuses or corporate enterprise type environments where they've got 15 buildings in a corporate park, but there could be tens of thousands of devices and network connections and things that have to be deployed. Oftentimes they're harder because you're living on site for a long time, and it's something that, again, they always think there's like an IT group for, but in many cases nobody wants to tie an IT guy up for 3 weeks running cable, right? So
Right.
that's a good fit for us as well, but we don't really play in the residential space.
Okay. Got it. So 100% commercial, which makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like any business that is scaling up or doing multiple locations, multiple installations, site to site to site to site over the course of a year, that's kind of bread and butter.
Yeah, that for sure, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, what's my experience with what you're talking about in many cases, I try to translate what you're saying into my world so I can
Yeah,
understand it at
yeah,
least.
yeah,
I think of like when my wife and I bought our house. I guess it's going on 25 plus years ago, and back in the day, Cat 5 or Cat 4, whatever
yeah.
that was like the thing, right? And now it's like I don't want any cabling. I want all
Wireless.
Wi-Fi,
Right.
Bluetooth. I
Yep.
don't want to have to plug in anything anymore because it's painful. But at the same time, to make it fast, 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 a lot of times cabling is still the fastest, way to
For
connect things.
sure.
So
Yeah, I think a lot of people have this misnomer of like everything is wireless, right? Especially when you think about Starlink services and all this stuff that you see now where it's satellite based and whatever. And we're getting there. I think the world is getting to a point where wireless will eventually be a primary and not kind of the afterthought or what's being provided to the end user. But for sure, like today, you'd be surprised how much cabling goes in. And actually, this whole AI wave that has come in, it's forced data centers to have to quintuple, if not more, the amount of cables that have to be run within those facilities. So if you think about really dense fiber optic environments, like those things that they now have terms, east, west, north, south cabling. Like there's things that like you wouldn't imagine where there's rooms and rooms of this really dense infrastructure. And if it didn't work, some of those services wouldn't be able to be provided. So cabling is definitely still here to stay for a while, you know?
well, I'm glad that you say that because quite frankly, if the Terminator becomes a real thing, you know, if
Yeah.
AI truly does take over, all we
Yeah.
got to do is cut the cable.
Cut the cables. For right now, we're safe. Skynet's not there yet, but we're believe me, as soon as that happens, I'll be the first one to run.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be running into the main data center with the big pair of cutters and
The cutters. Yeah.
okay, it's wanting to take over everything. Let's just
That's
cut the
true.
cable. And did you, by the way, it kind of aside, did you ever watch that TV series? I think it was Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've
The
seen
whole thing
definitely
where
heard of
like
those.
they've
Yeah.
got that old ship that's disconnected from the real
Everything.
outside
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
I think it's a perfect example, right? It's like, no, we're not going to get this ship taken over. We're on
It's true.
analog.
It's
We're
true.
analog.
Yeah, look, we're the cool part about what we do and like the satisfaction that we get is we are connecting a lot of people, right? So when you look at what results from what we do, there's like a tangible result, right? Which is always so satisfying because you could say those businesses came online, these stores are now operational. Like it's always fun to see stuff light up on a map green where you go, hey, that's super cool. The other thing that we find really satisfying is we're keeping Americans working. So in a world where like we constantly are outsourcing and there's always this talk of like, is there going to be jobs with AI? Like we're providing real work to people. And, even with AI, people are like it's taking jobs. I'm like, it has generated more jobs in our field than anything else. And it's not the programming side, it's actually the in the building stuff that you just don't think about.
Right. No, that's true, and I appreciate you saying that too.
No.
Um, so just I want you to go maybe like one level deeper in terms of like that stuff that you guys do, because quite frankly, one of the questions that I had is or have is okay, I'm a business or I'm a franchise or I'm a whatever. Like you said, maybe I'm a Chase Bank and I'm
Yeah.
deploying all these new locations. Why should somebody call you guys versus just calling some local IT company that does networking?
No, it's a good question. And like honestly, I would say both are okay because a lot of times the roads lead back, right? So what's amazing for us is we're a network of people, right? So we've got hundreds and hundreds of people that we are working with across the US. And some of them are little businesses. Some of them we help get into business. It was them, and then they hired their brother and their sister-in-law, and we've helped put them in business. So
Mm.
what's cool is not only are we out there chasing really big customers and saying, hey, we got to go land accounts, but what's neat is these little businesses, they have like an affinity for us, right? So even if the local branch calls an IT person, that may be one of our technicians. And those guys will call us and say, they asked about other things. And we said, well, we work with SG. So, why don't you call them and like we'll get the bigger enterprise involved. So it's amazing. You never know where your next job's coming from, right? And it was that way when I was 18, and now it's that way in my 40s. Like you never know what's going to happen, so you can't burn a bridge, and you always want to have great relationships. But
Yeah.
for us, the reason people call us is typically because they're getting lackluster support from others. And in our business, technology, as you guys know, you're in the tech space too, the bar is set so low that all you have to do is care a little bit, and unfortunately you're the best in the room, right? And
Yeah.
it's like it's unfortunate, but it's true.
Yeah.
But what we always said about our business was it came to be because we all worked for bigger businesses. So my EVP worked for an international conglomerate. The guy who runs our operations has run for international companies. We all did this for other folks, and we said, we could do this without all the red tape and offer a better product at a better price. And we sort of found each other through different means, and
Hmm.
the company sort of solidified with that mentality of we just have to be better than the next guy, so why don't we put a little care and TLC into it? And it's really been building and building, and I think our reputation over the last several years has been really good, and customers are finding us, and we're starting to get to a point where you're recognizing trends and you're like, I'm really good here. I really add value there. So we're chasing that more and more. But I think to your question, people look for us when they're lacking in other areas, and luckily
Yeah.
we've been able to fill those gaps.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now that's great. And yeah, I mean that's what every business is striving to do, right? Is fill a gap
Right.
that somebody
Yeah,
else isn't filling or isn't filling as well as they should. I mean, of course, there's plenty of work out there, so it's not like
for sure. Yeah.
even if you had competitors that were just as good as you guys, there's still more than enough work around the world to for everybody to kind of make money. So, but
Exactly.
still even within your own niche, you're hoping to kill everybody.
Be the best. Yeah, you still have to be competitive.
Dominate.
That's for sure.
Still got
That's
to
for
dominate.
sure. Yep.
Well, so what I'd love to learn a little bit more about you and your role because quite frankly, it's not every day that I run into people, anyone that describes themselves or has the title of Chief Technology Officer.
Sure.
CEOs, sure, COO, sure, CSI or CIO, CTO, a little bit
Yeah.
different. So, what tell me about kind of like the day in a life of a CTO. Like, what are the kind of things that you guys focus on?
Brad, it's terrible. You don't want to know what that's like. It's the no, no, no. I love it. Look, I think for me, like I started my career, I was a field tech when I started out, right? Like I've just always been in technology. I like to add value. And I found a real niche with being squarely placed between sales and operations and customers' needs, right? Engineering. And I just really love coming up with solutions. Like for me personally, it's always been what drives me. I like being able to connect those dots and really facilitating, right? Because a lot of people have this bad taste with salespeople or with ops people, and it's because they come from different walks of life and like they don't necessarily know how to bridge that gap. So they're always adversarial, but it's not because they're bad people. It's I think because they don't know how to communicate some of that stuff properly. Because
Hmm.
technology is tough, man. It's not easy. You guys are also in that space. So um, for me, a day in my life is really looking at where those things are happening, where sales and the customers are, where ops and the customers are, and then finding ways to remove friction from those daily moments, right? So ops people call me all the time and they'll say, I have to click this 10 times and this is such a pain. We need more people. And then you go, well, wait a second. If we did this, this, and this, wouldn't it make your job easier? And they go, yeah, that would be great. And then we can facilitate that, right? So I can get in, work with my team, automate things, we've brought some AI into certain situations to help. But also with empowering salespeople, how if you talk to any salesperson, I guarantee you in a moment of clarity, they'll say, I often feel like I'm on an island. I feel like I'm alone, and I'm talking to the customer, they're saying things, but I don't actually understand what they're saying. And I love being able to jump into those scenarios and say, let me help you close that deal. Let me help you have that conversation. And
Interesting.
the beauty of being in the CTO or a C-level title is you're not worried about commissions or losing an account or this or that. And you're just like, my goal is to empower the business. So if making that customer happy today or bridging that gap or helping that sales guy land a deal, brings value, I can do that and I don't have to worry about how we're getting paid or whatever, right? And oftentimes if I do a good job, other people are happier and they make more money and there's more opportunity. So I live in that world and I find that when I'm miserable, because everybody gets there, you look at it and you say, where's the biggest fire that I can put out today, right? Like where is that noise coming from? And oftentimes, even if I can't solve it myself, I can bring them to the right people and say I've helped facilitate. So a lot of folks have met me, worked with me, and said, you're more of a COO or you're more of a CEO. And I go, look, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and
Right.
I just want to do it. The other thing that goes along with that is like, personally, I really love business and I love understanding how people's minds work and all that. So I've kind of dubbed myself technology shaman, right? And I'm out there and I'm talking to schools about how to implement AI, and I'm releasing my own podcast called Cafe Technica that talks to folks and finds out what they're doing. But it's that drive to understand the why that I
Right.
think really pushes me, and that's sort of where I fit within this org. And I often find that over the course of my career, I've worked for a couple different businesses. Some of them have gone private equity, some of them have gone public. I find that I love working for smaller businesses because it's just more fun, and you can make a bigger dent kind of in your universe
Yeah.
than you can being a cog in the bigger machine.
Yeah, 100%. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that kind of like in my career, I remember the first couple of years after college, and I have an MIS degree, so I
Yeah,
understand
there you
the
go.
techie side, I understand, computer stuff. But I remember one of the first gigs that I had was going out to Texas Instruments back in Dallas and training literally people on how to use Windows. Of course, this is
Yeah, yeah,
talking about
yeah, yeah.
Windows 3.1.
Yeah, right. No, I get it.
and and but I remember walking down the this mile long corridor, within the Texas Instruments building, going, okay, none of these people know each other. I mean, it's like this is just a massive building with massive, you take a right turn and it's just another massive building with
Yeah.
another, long football field of cubicles. And I'm like, I would never want to work in a company that big.
Right.
Because I mean, you only know the three people that are sitting next to you, and everybody
Yeah.
else is just some random person, some other department. So I mean, like you, I mean, I've always preferred working in smaller businesses where I'm known,
Yep.
and the people that I am working with know me, and I know them, and everything else. And I don't know, maybe it's selfish too at some level, but I also want to feel like I'm making an impact, and it's hard
For
to
sure.
feel or know that you're making an impact in just a massive company. So
Nah, look, you're doing the right things. I mean, like the I used to get it made more sense to me now than it did when he said it. I used to work for a founder. His name's Jim, and he was our CFO. And he used to joke. He used to say, "Hey, you need to go and walk the halls. Like go to the customer and just walk the halls, walk the halls." And we are like, what does that mean, right? Like, how do I walk the halls? So I used to go with some of our ops people sometimes for these QBR meetings and things, and we would joke around. We take pictures of the long hallways that you're talking about, and
yeah,
we'd be like, we're walking the halls. Surprisingly, now looking back on it, you found more friends doing that. And good, like we had a conversation, they were miserable in that moment. We could bridge a gap, and you ended up adding value where they're like, that guy was cool. I'm gonna call him, and then we get business out of it. And I'm like, looking back at it now, maybe walking the halls isn't such a bad idea, right? Like, but because you're always able to help.
yeah. No, I love it. I love it. It's
Yeah.
there's that book about I think is it the 60-second manager or something like that? It's management by walking around.
Walking around. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, let's what so the other thing that I was going to mention, so when you were talking about kind of like your role, yeah, it sounded to me like part of what you do is technology focused, but the other part is more just like people and process.
100%. Yeah, look, I tell I like helping people start out with their career. So I often find myself I gravitate to like the newbies, right?
Mhm.
And I've always been asked, they're like, well, how do I get to your spot, right? And I'm like, look, just be careful what you wish for, because as you move up that corporate ladder, even in a small company, the closer you get to the value positions of a company, the further you get from the thing that you love, right? And I learned this from an old CTO of mine years ago. He said there's only two ways that you can gain control within a business: get close to finance or get close to sales. And the more I do this, the more I realize that's true. And what I tell people all the time is they're like, well, you must really play with really super cool tech. And when I said, to be honest with you, I do more accounting and sales stuff than I do technology stuff. And as you move up, I feel like you get further and further from that point. So, it is true. I think in my role, it's often I find myself in other areas, and that's actually how we met because we had some slowdowns and some inefficiency in finance when I started at SG, and we were looking for something. A friend in the business said, "Oh, you should really consider this VARC tool," and that's how we met. But it was very interesting to me that like you'll never know who's in that space until you start poking in and going
Right.
like, "Hey, my poor accounting people were struggling," and that's what allowed me to kind of bridge that gap and use your technology, which is cool.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Very
Yeah.
cool. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk a little
Sure.
bit more about kind of like your industry a little bit, because I know you're dealing with infrastructure, you're dealing with technology, and you've already mentioned it a few times, that everybody and their brothers talking about AI.
Yeah.
Um, but what are some of the trends that you're seeing more in the networking, the cabling, the infrastructure sort of side of things?
Yeah, I think it mostly has to do with documentation, sales engineering, and sort of the products, the process and products that go into delivering what we do, right? So, it is true to a certain extent that the space that we're in is sort of resilient to AI at the moment, right? Because it's not going to go out and actually pull a cable or drill a hole through the floor and that kind of thing.
Right.
Um, but you're always worried about what's going to happen. There'll be some tectonic shift, and then you won't need that. Um, for us, what I've seen a lot of is the stuff that goes into what we do, the sales engineering part, where you're looking and creating quotes or trying to figure out time and materials and budgets and things like that, or the documentation thereof, floor plans and marking things up with GCs and delivering all that documentation. That has monumentally shifted, I would say, in the last 2 years, where when I started here at SG, it was all done in one way, the way that I had learned.
Hmm.
And even just in the last 2 years, it has now shifted to you're using AI to get 80% of the way there within the first 10 minutes. And then you're saying, okay, let's add the final touches and correct.
Hmm.
So it's been very interesting. I just recently did a post on LinkedIn about this where I said, I think the executives that empower their mid-level people to use AI are the ones that are most successful because that experimentation in where it's going to work or whatever has to happen where those efforts are. And I think the ones that are saying we're going to push it from a top-down initiative or we're going to create a plan, it's like by the time you get your PowerPoint together, the technology has changed already, right? And I,
Yeah.
I often joke on the tech shaman side of things. I often joke that um, AI is the internet before it, right? And if you think about how fast the world changed when the internet came around, it probably took about 10 years, right? There was a
Yeah.
good 10-year like massive shift, and then it was like one day you were doing everything analog, and the next day you were doing everything online. With AI, I think that has become 2 or 3 years. And it's like if you're not there yet, you're sort of left in the lurch and people are starting to leapfrog you. So it's just about understanding where those tools are. I think where it's affecting us, like I said, is in documentation, planning, scheduling, being able to look at we have these old executives that say, let's put it on a calendar. And I go, by the time you get the calendar set, the decision has already been passed down and it's in flight. AI allows you to move that lightning fast to say you can use it to kind of create these things that are far more intelligent than an individual or what we can see as humans.
Wow, that's great. When I think of my journey through AI, it's been a little bit of a rocky road because
Yeah.
um, uh, I would say very plainly that I was an AI antagonist for at least
Yeah.
several years.
Yeah, yeah.
We lived through NFTs and all this other in bitcoins and all that,
Yeah, yeah.
blockchain, everything else. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay, yeah, until I can pay somebody with it, it's not real, all those different types of
That's
things.
right.
But I was very much of an antagonist, and part of that was because every company out there was racing to be first to get something in their product to say, hey, we're AI too. It's kind of like the We Too movement. It was the AI
Yeah.
We Too movement, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to be the last company on the block that has some AI powered something in it. But the problem was every single in product AI implementation that I saw was horrible.
Yeah.
Doesn't
It's
work,
unfortunate. It's true
doesn't
though.
help. It's the equivalent of the website chatbots.
Yep.
It's like, I'm looking for help on this. Hi, I'm your so-and-so AI agent. Let me help
Yeah.
you, right? And if it's anything real that you need help with, at the end, the last chat is, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. Here's the phone
Yeah.
number to call, right?
Yeah.
So it was just always sort of a glorified help. Even in QuickBooks for
Yeah.
folks that use QuickBooks for their accounting, Intuit's throwing a lot of AI into it and suggesting things and surfacing some insights, which can be helpful. For
Yep.
a lot of the in product stuff that we see, it still just doesn't work very well. So
Yep.
I was always pushing against AI because of those types of things. And then I sat through a half day, like, let's really talk about AI and how we can use it. And this expert guy came in and he just blew my mind. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
this is not in product. This is just general AI, right?
Right.
And that's what shifted it for me. And so from that point on, I started saying, okay, this could actually be pretty cool, right?
Yep.
But internally in my organization, it's one of those culture things, right? Everybody knew that I was not like really that for it. So they weren't
Yep.
fighting for it. They weren't pushing for it. They weren't trying to adopt it. The shift for me in our company has been, okay, now that from a top down perspective, am for it,
Yep. Yep.
I really have just released my organization to say, hey, look, go
Go
find
figure it
ways
out.
to use it.
Yeah, that's a great attitude to have though. Because you're right, like AI, like people in our business, they say like AI slop, right? And you see it a lot in TikTok and Instagram Reels and like, there's just so much garbage that gets created with this. But the analogy I've given people when I do these talks, especially at lower education, which is funny, I say it's very similar to selling tools, right? So like when the first compressor air hammer came out, there were probably every builder in the world saying that's going to kill people. You got to use, this is the tried and true way of doing it.
Yeah.
And you go like, yeah, you can't be mad at the tool for being dangerous. You have to say, how do I use the tool properly, right? And as soon as you learn how to use what it is, you can immediately cut through the slop because, if you go to any trade show, how many times do you see tools where you go, that's beautiful and useless at the same time? And
Mm-hmm.
then you go, if I actually understand what they're doing, though, sometimes you go, wow, I can see the beauty in that. So I think AI is very similar. Look, I think you're spot on. It's the ability for you to recognize the tool and say, I can get what the tool does now, release the organization to let them go find out the best way to use it because
Mm-hmm.
I think people will eventually like I every day somebody comes to me with something and I go, how did you do that? And they go, well, I was actually using this thing. And then you go, that's super smart. I would have never thought of that. And I'm so glad you did.
Yeah.
So it is amazing, but it is unfortunate because you have all this slop. It's the same with the internet though. If you remember when it first came out, how many terrible websites were there? And you were like, this is literally a website so that you had one. Like it's
Yeah.
totally useless.
I
And
built some of those and they were
yeah.
terrible.
Oh, me too. Me too. So
Black with purple text. I remember.
yeah, exactly. The spinning emojis and everything, like
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Well, so it
right.
is for me, it has been about empowering, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing that I've tried to do at least is whenever I find a use case that I try it first, right? And it comes back and it does something super helpful. I'm sharing that with the team, going, "Hey, here's something I just tried." And it's not all, quite frankly, it's not always business stuff. Um, I tell people that know me a little bit more on a personal level.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, as an owner, it's really, really hard to sleep well every night, right?
It is. Yeah.
I wake up at 3 in the morning pretty consistently, and I've got something on my mind. It's a
Yep.
business, it's an email, it's something.
Yeah.
And so I went into we were on Chat GPT, and then we moved over to Copilot with our little Microsoft transition. And
Yep.
so now I prompted Copilot and I said, when I want I want you to be my sleepless night cure, and help me, just ask me random questions that have nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
And so when the next time I wake up at 3 in the morning, I'm going to prompt you for helping me with my sleeplessness. And I've done it a few times, and it'll, like, if you were
Amazing.
if you were a spice rack, how would you, organize your spice rack by temperament, or,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
spices in your spice cabinet would be angry? And the whole thing was just to get me thinking about something completely different than
It's
what was keeping
smart
me up.
though. It works.
And it worked. It worked.
Yeah, that's
So
all
I
that
just
matters is it works.
shared that with the team and said, "Hey, here's an example," right?
It's
So
sometimes it's those silly things that make people go, "Oh, that's pretty cool. I'm gonna play with it." And then they start to use it. Like it is making it friendly, right? It's like what I know everybody idolizes Steve Jobs, but he really did make the computer friendly. And that's what changed the world. Like the reason he's idolized is because he made something very terrifying, super approachable.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, so I know we've talked about a lot of different things here. We talked about some trends. What when you look at the world through your eyes and through your business, again, just kind of back to the infrastructure and things like that, the things that you guys do.
Yeah.
What are some of the mistakes that you see companies making in that environment?
I've seen two that are huge, right? And I think one of them is right what we're talking about. I think too many of them are outsourcing to AI the value add of their business. So what I mean by that is we're in a people business. SG is in a people business. We communicate to people in the field and then we communicate to customers. And there is a need for that level of trust to be built with both the field and your customer that you can't give to a computer, right? A computer is great and AI is great at doing tasks. They're not great at doing things, right? Like and because when you say things, it's nebulous. Like a customer wants to know things that sometimes require a human touch. So I think what I've seen, the big one is they outsource the piece that actually adds the most value. And when they come to us, they find out with SG, I know Mike or I know Chris or I know Jeremy, and it's one of those things where they have a relationship with people. So there's a trust that's built. Now they don't care what tools you're using. You could be doing things under the hood that they don't really care about, but they do care that you know what's going on, right? And that you're not just letting it fly. So I think that's one of them. The second one is I think that businesses, because the economy has stepped up so much since COVID, and because the world has sort of shifted on its axis a bit, I think more businesses are so obsessed with statistics and the what it looks like on a balance sheet that they tend to forget that everything has a nuance to it, right? And I think that oftentimes they're trying to automate themselves out of business. And then what ends up happening is they don't automate themselves to success, they automate themselves to a detriment.
Hmm.
And I think what happens is, and I've seen this because I've been in the private equity world a bit through my career. And unfortunately, in those circumstances, you are at the mercy of a balance sheet and a P&L and having to deliver more and more results. And that's important. Any business has to grow, right? I tell people all the time, in business, you're not standing still ever. You're either growing or you're dying, and that's it. That said, you do have to have the nuance down and understand why do technicians want to work with SG and why do they do better for me than others? Why do the customers care more about us than they do our nearest competitor? Because, I'm not always the cheapest game in town either. And you go, why would a customer pay more for something that's the same? And oftentimes it comes down to how we made them feel. And, a lot of times it's like, man, that's an intangible that you don't see on a balance sheet. That is an intangible that you don't hear about unless you're talking to them. So
Yeah.
I think, in our world, The two things are really just, automating or outsourcing to AI with no end in sight and not realizing what you're doing. And also just that intangible piece and not just chasing the growth, but to chase a healthy infinite game mindset, right?
Hmm. No, very true. Very true. Well, this is fascinating stuff. And I want you to kind of talk a little bit more just in terms of some of the things that you guys do in the marketplace. Like I know, like one of the notes that we had talked about a little bit before was how you can mobilize a lot of people to a lot of locations almost
Yeah.
real time. So are you using technology to help you guys do that, or is that phone tree? I mean, it's like how do
It's
you
a lot of Crisco and butter, like you got to grease them wheels. Um, no, so I think it's both. Without giving away too much of our secret sauce, right? That is what we do, right? So what really makes us special, and there's others that do this, right? But we're pretty good at it, is customers will often say, "Hey, look, I have to go to every one of my locations and swap out a single device." And sometimes that's 10,000 locations, right?
Mm,
And by any stretch of the imagination, if you had to do that 10 times, it's not a big deal. But when you have to do 10,000, it's a problem, right? So, what really allows us to do that is sort of threefold. One is having the right relationships in the right places.
yeah.
So it's what you'd expect, right? Where people live is where we have to go. So it's all about recruiting and being in those geographies to have those right relationships. Who's there? What skill sets? What tools? Because a lot of companies will say, "Well, I have a universal tech," and sometimes I hear that and I laugh inside because it's like one person can't be responsible for everything, right? It's unrealistic.
Right.
So having the right relationships in the right areas allows you to pick the right resource when needed, right? So one of them is recruitment. The second piece is the technology. So, like I said, a lot of folks want to put things in calendars or on maps and things, and that was certainly a way to do things in the 1960s when NASA was trying to get to the moon. But now we're trying to go beyond that, and I think having the right technology to say, tell me where the people can realistically get to in an hour. Tell me where, and these mapping tools have gotten really, really great, right? So you can plug a bunch of info into AI tool sets and things, and get back a region calculator that allows us to go, these guys can realistically travel in this region, and then being able to kind of do that. And then the last piece is exactly what you said. It's getting somebody to call that person and then sell it to them in a way that makes sense. So I'll give you an example. In our world, when we have to do this, a lot of times people will route out work orders and say, "This is how much you're getting an hour," and the technician goes, "Great, I'm going to milk the hours, and I can count on 40 hours a week, and et cetera, et cetera." And you can do that, but then he moves really slow, and you just can't be efficient for your customer.
Right.
Um, in our world, we may come back and say, "I'm going to give you a fixed price on this, but you can move as fast as you want."
Hmm.
So a lot of times they go, "Well, I can make more than what I would have done by hour if I just do more of that stuff, and then I have free time to do other things." And you go, "Exactly." So getting somebody on the phone to sell the idea is very empowering. So I
Yeah.
think it is kind of all three things, right? It's the communication, it's the recruiting, and it's the technology. And when you pair that together in the right way, you can do these really huge, amazing projects where we're doing 1,000 site rollouts, we're doing 10,000 device deployments, we're doing, just recently I quoted something we're doing like 40,000 phones on a desk, and you go, that's in one place even, and you go, how many times you're gonna have to touch a device to do 40,000 things? Like that's a lot of touches.
Yeah.
So it is kind of all three. And I was sort of joking, but I wasn't like, you have to make things very smooth because with friction comes slowness, comes heat, and comes, an upset customer. So
Right.
you just have to be able to deliver in a smooth way, and it really requires kind of a concert of things to happen.
Well, it sounds like you've figured it out.
We
And,
like to think so. I don't
and,
know though all the time, but
I'm sure that's an evolving figuring it out.
a
There's
hundred percent it is.
no
Yeah.
such thing as like we have figured it out and we don't ever have to think about it again,
Yeah.
because things are constantly moving. But it sounds like you guys have really figured out that part. The closest approximation to what you're talking about on our end, and in terms of like QuickBase and QuickBooks and the
Yep.
kind of the world that we live in, is most of our clients have a CPA that they work with. We do the bookkeeping and QuickBooks consulting and that kind of stuff too, but we're not a CPA firm, so
Sure.
almost every one of our clients needs a CPA. Well, we've built relationships with CPAs around the country so that if any of our clients said, "Hey, I'm looking for a CPA, can you recommend one?" We probably can, right?
Right.
And
Right.
if not, within my network, I can also go to my network and say, "Hey, I've got a client looking for a CPA in Waxahachie," or "Hey, I've got a client
Right.
that's looking for a CPA in Jacksonville, Florida. Do you know anybody?" And usually I come up with two or three or four people. But so accessing the network that we've built is easy. I think the hard part is keeping it warm, right?
Yeah.
Keeping it active, keeping it nurtured, keeping it warm, so that these people aren't just like, "Who's this guy calling? Who's this guy that's emailing me saying, I've got
Yeah.
a referral for you or whatever." And so that for us, that's a constant challenge, because it's hard to stay in touch with thousands of CPAs around the country, at any like real level. But
Yeah.
we try. So
I bet you there's a great way to do that with QuickBase. Like, QuickBase has been such a cool partner to work for. And I think at the moment they're really on the move. Like I've been very impressed with their people, their process. They compete in a very big world, right? Like with the likes of Salesforce, Oracle, all of this stuff, NetSuite and stuff, like they really are the David and Goliath sort of scenario,
yeah,
but they consistently deliver in a way that's been very impressive. And I'm sure you guys are seeing this. And I'd love to talk to you probably after this about how you can keep those people warm, because that's the business we're in, of like you said, keeping those contacts going,
mhm.
that economies of scale. But they have been very, very good to us, and they've been very, very good to work with. So I'm sure you guys are using that tool
We are.
immensely.
We
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got our partners table, and
Yep.
tagging them as CPA or not or whatever,
Yep.
and what are their specialties and all that fun stuff. So yeah, we're absolutely leveraging it. And by the way, for people who are listening that they're like, "What in the heck is QuickBase? I've never even heard of that."
Yeah.
The way I always explain it to people I meet, networking, is QuickBase is kind of like Salesforce, just cheaper and more accessible to normal people, right? You don't have to have an IT department necessarily
Yeah.
to keep a QuickBase application going.
No, look, I was so prior to this, I ran a Salesforce environment, and look, I really love Salesforce. I can't say enough nice things about them. That said, there's always a right tool for the right job, and now having used QuickBase so intimately, there are clear differences between them, and they really do have the approachability down. Like you said, like a layman can get in, and within 6 months' time, you could be a real expert.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the experience definitely comes with time, and it's not something that's immediately overnight. But since
Yeah.
it's low code, you can figure it out. I we just onboarded a new employee on our team, this last week, and this morning I was sitting there giving them here's what our QuickBase is, and here's how we built it, and here's all the things that we do with it, and here's what we do with clients with it, and his mind was just like, you know
Yeah. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
can do all that. I'm like, yeah, it can. And at the same time, I'm like, you want a report that shows you this, this, and this? Well, it doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. Let me go create it right now. So I showed him, and 2 minutes later, it's like he's got this report that he was looking for. And he's like, that's pretty cool. So being able to do that on the fly without having to call IT,
Yep.
that's one of the biggest reasons that I like it. So yeah. Well, anyways, we could have a whole nother show
I love
speaking
it.
about
Yeah.
that.
That's great.
Well, as we get to the end of the show, just final thoughts. I mean, I know one of the things that we had written down to maybe talk about was like how to future proof your IT infrastructure. Anything along those lines that you just kind of have a vision for?
You know, I my old COO years ago said the only future proofing is an empty pipe. So that because you never know what you're going to pull next, you know? And I feel the same about technology and kind of future proofing your business. The one thing I would argue is you never know what's coming next, you know, from a customer question, from a internal needs perspective, from an economy perspective, you don't know what's coming. And anybody that says otherwise is probably very blind in what they're doing. So I think the best way to future proof is really to give yourself maximum flexibility, right? And being able to have those good partnerships. Like I said, you know, VARC was a tool that we didn't know about one day, and the next day we couldn't imagine living without it. That Q2Q connector is fantastic. You know,
Hmm.
there's other partners even within QuickBase I look at and I say, you know, if I didn't find those people like Juice, I wouldn't have known what we were going to do next. So being able to keep an organization sort of flexible and not getting too stuck down the road of an advanced product set or an advanced process so that you can about face and make changes when needed is
Yeah.
critical to the business's success. And I often tell my tech people, you know, don't get obsessed with products or certifications or things because sometimes by the time you get them, those things are gone. Build the foundational blocks and build them strong so that everything that goes on top of them can kind of be modified, but you never have to remove the basement. You never have to remove the foundation. And I think that that still holds true today. You know, like we lean back and we always say you're gonna have to have those great relationships in the field and with customers. So we're never going to get rid of those pieces, but everything in between can change tomorrow. So I think it's important to keep that open pipe, like I was taught, you know, and just keeping your business flexible.
Well, I love what you just said, and I can very, very tangibly relate to the open pipe.
Yeah, yeah,
Because the amount
yeah,
of times that I've had to rewire or literally physically rewire,
yeah,
something, and paying through the nose because I didn't have that open pipe
yeah,
that
right.
somebody could just pull a new line through. I mean, again, this is such a silly side conversation, but like in our house with our media room, it's like
Yeah,
it's got these really, really tight ceilings and walls, and it's so tight that you can't even pull
a
a
cable or
cable on it
anything through.
that's
Yeah,
bigger than a certain thing,
yeah,
and it can't go around this 90-degree bend. So
yep.
like literally we had to just like screw it.
Trash it. Yeah. I know I think about my son's now getting to the age where we're starting to make man caves and this and that. And I look at it and I go, man, I never thought of this when we were building the house, you know? Like I should have left a spot open for this. I didn't know. But it's true. And I think it's true in life too, right? Like if you remain flexible and can find common ground, you'll always get there. It's the folks that are very apprehensive and resistive that, you know, it makes it that much harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And the just the your comments just about foundation principles, sticking with kind of like nailing the basics, making sure you're doing that stuff, but building in the ability to be flexible.
Yeah.
Because like you said, things are going to continue to change. Are you developing yourself into a box, that
Right.
is going to you can't even transition to the next thing without massive amounts of pain. Yeah, that's something of course we deal with all the time, right? Is
For sure.
from a like a software development standpoint, you don't want to build something that's built on a code base that can't
Nobody
just
uses
be.
tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. So, well, hey, this has been great. Really, Tom, just appreciate you being on the show and kind of sharing some of your wisdom, not just on the technical side, but on the people side and some of the things that you do. So, if there is a business out there and they're like, I need what he does, how do they get a hold of you guys?
Great question. You can hit sgnetservice.com. That's our website. You can also find us on LinkedIn, SG Network Services. My name is Tom Roberto. Throw me a message. You can schedule time in my calendar right from there. And we'd love to hear from you. And Brad, look, I really appreciate what your company does, the way that you guys have treated us, and I appreciate you having me on the show. It's been a blast.
Absolutely. So SG Net Services, and you mentioned, by the way, you mentioned a podcast of your own. So what plug that again?
Yeah, sure. You can find it on Apple, Spotify. It's called Cafe Technica. We're about to start season two. And I have a website, technologyshaman.online. where I talk about, my frameworks for thinking and how you can kind of help a business. But, definitely always thinking of ways that we can help people.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks again for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. And for those of you that are watching, listening, hope this was really valuable to you. Time well spent. That's always our goal, is to have guests on the show that really kind of help, make you think differently about certain topics. And Tom, you've definitely done that for us today. So thanks again for watching, and we will see you again next week. There is a Solution for That is produced by VARC Solutions. This episode was produced by Ashley White and Aaron Riley. You can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Watch the video version on youtube.com/theresaSolutionforThat. Or visit theresaSolutions.com/podcast, where you'll find our entire podcast archive, as well as show notes, links to solution providers, and complete transcripts of every episode. If you love the podcast, please leave a review with your comments.